Here we go. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Beyond Telehealth and Telemedicine is Medicine. My name is Dr. Lisa Finkelstein, and tonight we're going to feature Teton Orthopedics and their journey through telemedicine, talking to the team that helped get this started off the ground. So let's first introduce yourselves and tell us the name of your practice, where you practice, what EHR you use, and we'll just go around. And Kellen, you can start.
Hi, I am Kenlyn Long, and I am the practice administrator. We use next-gen software and Zoom for telemedicine. And our main office is located in Jackson, Wyoming, but we actually have 6 satellite clinics around the state as well. So, Jill?
My name is Jill Bell, and I am a medical assistant here at Teton Orthopedics with Dr. Yost.
Hi, I'm Dr. Heidi Yost at Teton Orthopedics, and I am practicing in the Jackson, Wyoming office.
Hi, I'm Danny Yost, and I'm IT support here at Teton Orthopedics.
All right, so this is the spine, the backbone of Teton Orthopedics. So the next question is, were you using telemedicine prior to the pandemic? And I'm going to ask Dr. Yost to answer that one.
We started to use Zoom telemedicine about 2, maybe 3 years before the pandemic to help accommodate patients who were far away, and we didn't need them necessarily to drive, 2, 3, 4 hours to come see me in clinic, and I could do it more easily on telehealth for them through the Zoom platform.
So I remember, Heidi, when we came down to introduce the concept of telemedicine to you, to Danny, to Kenlyn, and it was the typical response, like, tele what? And then it takes a champion, a physician champion like you, to say, you know what, let's try it. Let's do it. And you and Krista, tell us a little bit about the pre-pandemic journey for a minute or so.
Well, at first, there were a few difficulties as far as how to set it up, understanding how it would work. These patients maybe didn't have Zoom. Zoom maybe wasn't a big thing back then. So we had to conquer that. That wasn't all that difficult once we became familiar with it. And then we had to look at the insurance coverage, because certainly patients, when they have an appointment, want to be able to submit it to insurance. So to kind of sideline that, because insurance wasn't looking at telehealth as one of the things that they were going to cover, we worked with post-operative patients where they were still in the global period and we didn't have to worry about that.
But the advantage of Wyoming is because it's rural, pre-pandemic, CMS was allowing patients to go to an originating site. Remember, like Du Bois Clinic?
Yeah, we did that. Yep.
Right? And then you would get paid. Jump ahead to now. Let's jump ahead to now. And all these barriers, these rules of insurance and where the patient had to be came crumbling down in 2 minutes. So let's talk about how you guys now got up and running. Let's go to Danny and Jill and talk about how did it work with the whole practice, getting everybody on board.
So I can take that. So we needed to get the Zoom client installed on all the PCs or the rooms where the physicians would be doing telehealth appointments. They needed webcams installed on the PCs. And then we needed to get the physicians' licenses, so access to the Zoom, give them a Zoom account with licenses. And we did that through the Wyoming Telehealth Network. They licensed us at the University of Wyoming. Great team there, really helped us out. And once we had the accounts up and running, the MAs then were able to log in and schedule appointments and start working with the patients. So Jill.
Yes, and so scheduling patients was the same as we schedule normally. We would schedule them in the same increments. And it would just take going onto the Zoom platform, making the schedule, the time, the date, schedule, organizing that with the patient, and then emailing them the link that the Zoom platform would then give us, along with the password. I would highlight that in the email, so that would be really, in their face when they opened it, so they could see exactly how to link on. And along with that, we would attach a PDF of how to download the Zoom platform onto their phone, or how to access it, so that when that appointment time came, they would be able to easily join on. And
so let me ask a question for you, Jill and Heidi. So one of the questions that comes up with workflow is on the patient side, I get comments that, they don't like waiting for the doctor. So if they have an appointment and the doctor's running behind on telemedicine, then sometimes they're, they don't know how long it's going to be. They could do like a load of laundry. They could, do stuff around the house. How do you handle that? Do you call them up and say, Dr. Yost is running behind? What's that process?
Typically, I try to go in the room right at their appointment time, and we have a waiting room on Zoom, so I let them in. And so I'm the first person they see, and I just let them know, hey, Dr. Yost will be right in if she's running on time. Or I try to give them a number. So I'll be, it'll probably be like 5 minutes. Are you okay with that? And most people, most everyone is like, yeah, I'm fine. I'll just keep doing what I'm doing, and I'll be here when she's ready. But I do let them know in case they want to, reschedule or come back on, and I try to give them a timeline.
How about Heidi? Do you ever think about do you ever have like an allotted time, like, in the morning, I'm going to do 5 telemedicine visits back to back to back to back, or do you do a hybrid where you physically see a patient and then do a telemedicine patient?
I feel that we in our workflow have done better with the hybrid, because when we had it back to back at first, sometimes there were technical difficulties and it went over and that didn't work. And then we would have patients who were trying to get on, but they couldn't get on. And I find it's pretty easy, actually, in the midst of running a clinic in a hybrid. We have 1 or 2 rooms of our 4 rooms that have the Zoom platform up with the camera that we use solely for Zoom. And that as long as my team, and it took a little bit of time to become efficient at it, to keep that room where I can just jump into that room and do the Zoom while we're trying to run the rest of the clinic. So it is a workflow issue and getting comfortable with it.
And I think that's one of the reasons why I wanted to highlight you guys, because you have been using it, prior to the pandemic. So most physicians have been forced to use it, and then they're just in this panic stage of, oh my God, how does this work? Kenlyn, I want to ask you a question. How many providers do you have in the practice?
13.
And so Heidi, I know Heidi and Krista were using it pre-pandemic, and none of the other providers were. How did it work with getting all of them on board?
Well, orthopedics is so hands-on that the surgeons were really, having a difficult time visualizing not seeing a patient in person. So when they were forced to practice telemedicine in March, patients were uncomfortable coming into our office. So it was either telemedicine or no medicine. So fortunately, Danny was already had it down to fine art. And so he came in and installed it in the computers, did Heidi's first, and then started installing it on other computers for other providers. And he then sent an email just telling everyone that it's there, it's on their desktops if they wanted to use it. Funny story, in about 2 days, all the cameras sold out. I don't remember, Danny, how you ended up getting more cameras, but on the black market or something. But he managed to find enough and it just caught on. The medical assistants, all of a sudden their schedules were empty. And so They went in and evaluated who was eligible for telemedicine. And I think they were going to probably your medical assistants, Heidi, and finding out how to log in. And I will say the ones that were most resistant are now the ones who love it the most. And
funny? Yeah.
out of the 13, we have 11 providers still using it.
Right.
On a regular basis. So I think it's here to stay.
Okay. Well, we're going to get to that in a second. I want to ask Heidi. So another common question is, so I'm a urologist and I get asked all the time, what do you do when you have to examine a patient, right? So my exam is a little bit different sometimes, okay? I mean, I can examine a patient's abdomen, and we have figured out how to do a really good abdominal exam. And I'll give you a funny story, and then you tell me how you do it. So on one of the interviews was a pediatrician who does sports medicine, and he said that he basically gets his patients ready by making sure that they are wearing shorts and, is ready for the exam. One of the patients was a mother with a child who was, I don't know how many months old, that had a nurse's elbow. And the mom did not want to bring the child in. And he talked her through how to reduce the elbow quickly on a video visit. And he said that was it. He said, once I saw that, it opened his mind to being able to, do all kinds of orthopedic exams. So tell me what you do, for an exam that you have, or a wound check or something like that.
Well, it is more challenging. You certainly want to lay your hands on the person to be able to feel clicks and clunks and the color of the skin and the incision or what may it be. But I feel we've overcome that, and the patients are so amenable to doing anything possible. Some of these patients are practically turning upside down on their heads to be able to show you their feet, or taking their desktop off of their desk to, lifting it up and turning it down to be able to look at their feet in the weight-bearing position. Using a mirror actually helps with that. So there have been some tricks that we've come up with to be able to help with the exam. One really interesting thing is I've been able to help some of the providers in the outlying clinics be able to reduce fractures, being able to describe it better and walk them through it. So it's been an amazing tool.
Right. And the other, big elephant in the room for physicians is they say, well, Lisa, I'm only going to do this if I can get paid for it. And, as of right now, with the waivers for the public health emergency, we are getting paid for all these types of visits, but some of this stuff may go away. And that would be unfortunate, because we now have, a whole new world open to us. Do you have an opinion about that?
Well, I think it would be the most exciting, not only for the physicians, but the patients, to be able to continue in the state that we have, with CMS covering it and having that open door. It just, it expands so many things that we can do. One of the things that I have found that have been really beneficial is, before the pandemic, we get a lot of studies, MRIs, CTs, lab work, where the patient didn't necessarily have to come back to the office. And we would call them up and try to describe it over the phone so they didn't have to come back to the office. But now I can easily jump on Zoom, do share screen, and roll through their MRI or their CT right on the computer. And the patients love that.
Is there any, Danny, is there any issues with that? I mean, no, like looking at an image. Do you have two screens that you guys use?
No, you can share that particular program. So you just have the PACS viewer up, and then the patient can see the mouse while the physician's talking. And
so it's a little picture of you up here.
Yeah.
And then the rest of the screen is whatever you're showing.
The screen. Perfect. So you guys are using that on Zoom.
Yeah.
So So then, Danny, let me ask you, we briefly touched on, are you looking to pivot to other platforms? Are you pretty happy with what this is? Have you looked into next gen? What's sort of the next step?
We haven't looked into next gen. I think we did look at doctor.com, which is that one platform, for reviewing providers. Their system had a lot of faults in it, or we're missing a lot of
tools.
What did I say? Little tools. Yeah. Mostly was scheduling. They had pretty neat, waiting rooms for the doctors, could each have their own waiting room, and the patients can go in and they can see who's in the waiting room. But it was very cumbersome to schedule. So we abandoned that. Well, I've abandoned that. I haven't really pursued it much. And Zoom has been working very well. So, if you're a license, if you have a Zoom license, you're not a free account. With the Zoom license, you can actually set up aliases. So there could be a Jill can log in, but she's under Dr. Yost.
Right.
So she could do scheduling. With a free account, if Jill were to log in as Heidi or Dr. Yost, it would kick her out of whatever computer she was currently logged into. And so that became a little bit of a problem at first when we started using free accounts. Now the MAs can stay seated at their desk, do all the scheduling while the doctor's in the room doing the appointment.
Yeah, there's a lot that you can do with Zoom if you dig in.
And Zoom does allow concurrent calls, but I think it's a professional version. I think it's called the practice license. So it's a license for the whole practice, which is it's expensive. And it does offer actually a lot of extra functionality.
We can talk about that offline, Danny.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Okay. Let's tie this up with two questions. One is, let's just go around the room. Let's start with Kenlyn. You already said it, but do you think that telemedicine is here to stay in your practice of 13 providers at Teton Orthopedics?
Absolutely. I mean, Teton Orthopedics, as well as the rest of Wyoming, is actually really suited for the product because we're so remote. And so 50% of our patients come from out of town. And Heidi gave some examples, whether it's a post-op visit just to see how they're feeling or to review an MRI. That is just something that is so convenient for the patient, especially on a snowy day like today. I just see it sticking around, whether we get reimbursed or not. I mean, it's just so practical.
That's great.
And post-op appointments being the global period that aren't really paid for anyway, it makes sense.
Okay. Jill, what do you think?
Yeah, I think patients love it, especially the patients that, are older or live 2 or 3 hours away. They are so grateful when we can do it in the comforts of their own home. So I think that definitely here to stay.
Danny.
I think it's here to stay. I mean, technology, the way it's progressing with our phones, laptops, tablets, cameras are built into everything now. And pretty much, everybody has one with them wherever they go. They can continue to see their doctor from vacation or wherever they are. It's becoming a lot easier for patients to do that. I think
we say that we bring healthcare to the patient now.
Yeah.
It's a whole different paradigm. Heidi, what's your feeling?
Well, I think it's here to stay. And another unique piece of it that I didn't mention is we have a lot of visitors. And so when we help and repair and fix visitors and they go on back home, I'd like to continue to provide them care for continuity. And it's always been, I have to contact a doctor there. But if I can team up with a therapist or another care provider, wherever they've gone far away, I can still continue to see them through their Zoom appointment. So that's been a real bonus.
Yeah, and on that note, that's a sticky point because, again, with the emergency waivers, you are allowed by law to do that across state lines. But That may go away, where the provider needs to be licensed in the state where the patient is located, which, don't get me started, because if you see the patient in Wyoming and they go travel back to New York, how is that any different than if they were in Wyoming? So, the telemedicine champions need to tell the lawmakers and the legislators that we need to figure out this licensing part. Let me look real quick. I think there's a comment. Oh, appreciate the topic of workflow. Okay. Heidi, do you have a funny story that you could tell about telemedicine with a patient?
Well, I think the funniest stories are those where I am trying to see a specific part of their body or have them do a specific maneuver, and they're just doing, these twister moves, or they have whomever's there with them. Oh, hey, mom or dad or, their sibling come over and try to twist the computer or the camera, and they're trying to hold their arm. It's kind of funny.
So you get the whole family, the dog, the cat,
And
whoever.
It's kind of nice to see where they are and where they're from and the personal aspects of them being in their own environment.
One of the things that I started with way back when, a couple of years, was the PT department, physical therapy, OT, and speech. And they were gung-ho telemedicine. And one of the reasons was because they could see the patient's home and look at the obstacles of where they lived and tailor their, treatment plan in their home, which is really good. Well, this has been fantastic, and I appreciate all of you guys doing this, talking about your workflow, getting some insight into how a healthy orthopedic practice was able to pivot to telemedicine. So thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.